Hello, I'm James, and I'm an old guy in Europe. Hello, and welcome to another episode of An Old Guy in Europe. This week on the Good Morning Portugal Show with Carl Munson, we discuss such things as how change, like moving to a new country for instance, and stress always come together, the stress lag and managing stress, rites of passage, ecclesiastes, Mark Twain's Captain Stormfield's visit to heaven, and the Serenity Prayer. So, as always, I invite you to please sit back, relax, and enjoy.
We know him by his little swing at the end there. Good morning to you. What's going on? Good morning. I fear the worst. I've got Simply James on the screen and I've got Simply Slug in the comments. What are you up to?
Is that confusing you now? That was
It
my
is.
plan.
Yes, it's worked. It's worked. How are you? How is Eddie said? How was your weekend, James?
Well, to be perfectly honest and transparent, not so great. Last night I got hit. Well, let me backtrack a little bit. I think I got COVID. I didn't take the test because I just treated it as if I did. So I don't need to prove that I do or don't. I'll just make sure that I'm not infecting anybody. So I've been isolating. The first few days were like barely any problem at all. But last night a fever hit me big time, and I wasn't sure I was going to be able to make it today. But this morning things are considerably better. So it all worked itself out.
You trooper. Well, I do commiserate. You do sound not quite 100%. And really appreciate the effort you've made to be here this morning and the measures you're taking to isolate yourself and get yourself through this. What are you doing? You hydrating and just home in the crib and just thinking even more than you normally do?
I don't know about thinking more. I don't know if that's possible. But, yeah, I'm noticing I've got a lot of phlegm in my throat this morning that I did not have yesterday. So forever changing, which is actually right spot on, because for some reason I was thinking about change over the course of the weekend and thought, well, that might be an interesting thing to talk about.
Yes, about change and transformation. Okay, well, let's go for it. So what's been on your mind in this even more reflective state that you might have been in than usual?
Well, I was in thinking about change, and this is not a new thought. Change is a part of life. I mean, it just is life. You could almost use them interchangeably. It's inevitable. It's constant. There's no avoiding it. And so the question then becomes, what control do I have over what's changing in my life? Some changes I control. You know, I chose to come to Portugal, for instance. That's a huge change, and I chose that. It's something I wanted. This infection that I've had over the weekend was not a choice I made. It was also a change. I didn't want it, but so what do I do with that? I accept that it is what it is. I ride the course out. I pay attention. I take care of myself. I do the things I need to do. But the bottom line ultimately is we can't escape change. And it was sort of a joke. I said, we change our minds, we change our clothes. It's everything changing. Yes. So another point about change is that it has been shown that all change creates stress. So even if we call it positive change, for instance, deciding I want this new adventure in Portugal and I'm going to make that change, well, that creates stress as much as what we would call negative change, getting fired from a job or something along that line. So either way, it's creating stress. So it's important to keep that in mind as we look at self-care. Life is constantly changing. Now, the sun rising and setting during the day is not going to be a stressor, I don't think. It's change, but it's not personal change.
It can be. To be fair, it can be, can't it? I mean, I get what you're saying. It is natural and right. But for those who aren't ready to get out of bed and those who aren't ready to go to bed, it does present that clunk that I think you're talking about.
True, yeah. And, as the weather changes, some of us like rain, some of us don't, that kind of thing. So those changes, I guess the point is that those I would consider to be minor stressors. It is something that's just part of living a day. But the larger stressors are the things that happen in our lives personally. As I was looking at this idea of change, and I know it's not, well, I'll just say it. I thought of the old Birds song, "Turn, Turn, Turn," which was from a Bible verse about how the season, for every season, there's a reason, all those things. And I don't think that's technically about change, but about how that there's a time for everything. But it still involves change, and that came to mind. And it's a song I haven't thought about in a long time. I didn't know when it first came out. It was based on I think it's an Old Testament poem of some sort. So.
Well, I'm completely with you on this, and I think what that does for me, for every season, and this idea of change and transformation is that it's inescapable, is it not? And in that song, I think they talk about how for every season there is a change. So in some ways we can anticipate change as well, can't we? And also not avoid it. Because one of the problems, I think, of our modern culture is that we would just like to live a kind of flatline life of ease and convenience from start to finish without facing too much trouble. And that's why there's like stress management, and that's why people don't want to face difficult things. And I understand that as a human instinct, isn't it, to avoid trouble. But in trouble there will be, sounding like Yoda for a minute. And we've also eradicated some of the ceremonies and cultural constructs, I think, or AKA rites of passage, that make some of that stuff easy. Would you agree? So, like the transition from childhood to adulthood is not really marked in any meaningful way. I mean, even when I was a kid, at least you got a plastic key sprayed in silver with 18 or 21 on it to somehow suggest that, okay, you're on your own now. Does anyone get anything now to say, okay, you're an adult now, apart from all the bills, your own place, and the stresses that go with that? We don't mark it in a necessarily proactive or dynamic or positive way, do we?
Well, there are cultures and religions that do that specifically. I mean, the Jewish religion does that for their boys and girls. I know that there are certain, and I can't be specific, but I know there are certain native traditions around coming of age. And I think that's important because especially at that time in life, there's a change and the confusion is, am I a child or am I an adult? Where am I? And that's the challenge of adolescence, is how do I fit in? So I think something more than an 18th birthday in the United States, which is the age of majority, is not really, it's not a ritual per se. It's something we do every year on a birthday. I used to think about this. The only thing that we know we have completed in American culture is when we graduate from high school.
Yes, that's one, isn't it?
We're done. We got through this challenge called or any education, and now we're right around age of majority. So that's sort of a demarcation of something that's complete. Then there's a graduation ceremony that says, hey, you did that. You got through 4 years of high school and here's your diploma. So there's something in that creates completion that we don't often, at least in modern Western culture. I think you're right. We don't have very many traditions that specifically give us some kind of ritual or recognition of a change that is a part of all our lives.
Mm. Well, sorry, I kind of distracted you and took you off in a direction of rites of passage, and so I'm marking these things. But I suspect I might have interrupted your flow on managing change management, which I suspect is the backbone of what you're sharing with us today.
Well, yeah, and I think that the key there is recognizing that all change is stress. So any strategies that we have, any applications to relieving stress are important to keep in mind as things change. Uh, I don't remember statistically what it was. I just remember reading about it years ago. That there's a lag between experiencing stress and experiencing a reduction in quality of health. So if we're having a stressful time now, some period of time, 3 months or 6 months later, is when we're going to feel that in our physical health. So it's important to understand that change, whether it's something we desire or not, whether it's something we call positive or negative, is something that if we choose to remain as healthy as possible, then it's something we want to be mindful of and do what we do. For me, it's as I've said again and again, it's always deep breathing, intentional, and gratitude. Finding a way to relax, getting out in nature, those kinds of things. I don't know that we can or would choose to do that constantly, since life is constant change, but in the bigger moments, making a move to Portugal, or the opposite, deciding to go it didn't work and moving back, that might be a more difficult, stressful change. But change in any situation, just being aware of how much of a toll might this take on my health, and let me address it now so that it doesn't knock me down later.
Yeah, well said. And I think the key thing that I've heard this morning from you is that all change is stressful. Because I can be a bit of I have been, and less so these days, I think, but more of a sort of Pollyanna positive thinker. It's like, yeah, I welcome stress and change, but I think that can overplay and overegg things a little bit, and not necessarily fully understand and account for and adjust to what's going on, which can come at a cost, I think.
Yeah, well, if you truly embrace it and find joy in it, then it's going to have much less negative impact on you than if it's a drag, something you're trying to avoid it or run away from it. I did want to go back just a little bit to what you said about the tendency, and I agree with you that we have this idea that we would like things to remain more constant, more on an even keel. But in truth, I think all of us, or well, maybe not all, but most of us would find that a boring life after a while. Like it just would never change. Mark Twain wrote a short story with a long title called "Extract from Captain Stormfield's Visit to Heaven," and it's about this old sea captain who's off to heaven, but he's writing in first person about his experience, like he's writing in a diary or something. But when he arrives in the equivalent of the American heaven, because heaven is, well, I'm just surprised Mark Twain wasn't tarred and feathered after he wrote that, because if you read it, he doesn't say it outright, but everybody goes to heaven. The Native Americans, bad guys, the good guys, everyone goes to heaven. But he never says everyone goes. He just tells you who's going, and it turns out, that's everyone, which is his style. But in the American style heaven, when the captain finally gets there, now this is a guy who's lived a dynamic life as a sea captain. He's arriving in heaven with this idea of a harp and a Bible and, sitting on a cloud and just resting for eternity. And basically, the style is so great, Mark. This is what Mark Twain is known for, is really getting the character in his writing style. And he says, after about a day of that, I was ready to, just put down my harp and my Bible. And he says, the farther I walked, the more I saw people unloading their loads and the new people taking it on. So it's like, enough of that. I want something more adventurous, more exciting. It's a really interesting read, but it definitely addresses that note of if nothing changes, like forever, the concept of eternity sitting on a cloud, meditating is not what we imagine it might be when we're longing for consistency. I think really what we're longing for is maybe less change and less dynamic change. Maybe it's those extreme shifts that really wear us out, that we just say, oh, I'm tired of this, please.
We've had biblical references to them. Perhaps it's like sufficient unto the day is the evil thereof. I think it's, as you say, it's unrealistic to expect no change or plot twists, but a manageable amount and responded to in a robust and healthy way with one's own resources and with the help of friends seems like how life could and should be, if I may should on everybody for a moment there. So thank you for ever, you've been called the coach this morning. You are our mental coach. We've got a few greetings coming in and people sympathizing with how you're in Desert Dweller. Aviva saying, I also get the stress related to change. I'm neck deep in it. D7 appointment in 4 weeks. So you made a specific reference to moving here, and that's why we like to have you here. You've been through this process, and I think you can speak on it with some authority. Well, and from a number of angles, James, as well. So we do have you in mind if you are moving to Portugal and you're going through these processes. Join us every Monday morning with some thoughts from the Redwoods. And of course, the Celtic prayer that is used at Alcoholics Anonymous comes up in our conversation, doesn't it? The Serenity Prayer, it's a long one. It's 9 o'clock, so I won't read the whole thing, but maybe this is appropriate to what we've been talking about this morning. The AA prayer, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Is that a mic drop on your section this morning, James?
That was a perfect conclusion to today. That was great.